We're back with Dory Campbell on Lutherans Alive, talking about the Bonding Garden program of ELCMA, Evangelical Lutheran Coalition for Mission in Appalachia. I'm getting so good at that, I want to say it every opportunity I get.
Good too.
We were talking, Dory, going into the break about the 4 training areas. You mentioned the planting and the ground preparation. You mentioned the nurturing and the growth process. And I think we were just talking then about the food preparation and the product that comes from the planting. That's got to be a neat time for people when they actually see the fruits or vegetables actually appearing on the vine and looking forward to anticipating the harvest.
I have been a gardener for a long time in my own backyard, and I can't tell you what it feels like when you see that first little tomato coming on and you go out every day to check its progress. And the gardeners will do that. They'll come back to the site where the gardens are set up and check very faithfully. They'll water them and care for them. Sometimes we have to make sure they don't overdo it. But yes, it is very exciting. We try and help them, though, to have at least one plant in their garden that they normally wouldn't expect. We give them an heirloom seed plant that's started, so that the squash may be purple instead of the normal yellow or something. And then when we get to the preparation and preserving time, we'll teach them how to fix it, how to prepare it. And you know, even some of the things that you and I might have on our dinner table, like eggplant, for instance, might be foreign to folks who frequent a food pantry and don't have the luxury of having something, would I call that exotic? I don't know, but something a little different. And so we're trying to expose them to some of those things. We also, when we're teaching them to preserve and prepare things, we want to remember that some folks may only have a hot plate. They may not have a freezer. One of the things that Dr. Ebenezer put us on to are dehydrators that are made out of cardboard boxes that are lined or painted in black and have foil in them, and they're put in the sun. So that it is free to dehydrate your
natural dehydrator.
Yes,
How about that?
He's a very wise man. Technologyforthepoor.com is his website, and you can get all kind of cool ideas there. And that's one that we're using in our training classes so that folks can prepare these things, preserve them, and have them for the future, regardless of what their living accommodations might be. And then the last workshop that we do with them is really a celebratory time. It's a time for them to look back over the journal that they've been keeping, to really take stock of the fact of how much they've grown, not just what they have grown, but that they themselves have grown, and to celebrate that growth, and then invite them into the possibility of being a mentor next year for a new set of people coming into the program. So we know they can take their wading pool and go home. And some people need to. Some people have to go or move. But some people want to share what they've learned. And that's very exciting. We're just now, this year, starting to have that happen.
Come to that first end of the cycle.
Yes. And so they're anticipating being able to be the teachers instead of the one that's taught. It's very exciting.
You mentioned with each of those 4 teaching areas, making the connection with a local expert or merchant. Talk a little more about the importance of that aspect.
Sure. The reason we try and make sure that our gardeners are connected to the community is so that they won't be dependent on us anymore. If ELCMA should not have a grant next year to continue, or if the church should, heaven forbid, close and they wouldn't have those partners there, the gardeners would be able to go into the community because they know Joe at the hardware store. They know the person at the extension office. They know the matriarch who helped them with the canning, and they can go to those people independent of us. And that way, they'll be able to continue what they've learned, or maybe even, you know, we think friendships have been created, and we know that what happens when those relationships will sustain them in other areas of their lives. So that's very important to us to make sure that happens.
We were talking earlier, as you said, the importance of becoming a bit more self-sustaining and to be able to carry forward that thing. In many ways, in terms of people that we help in the world, we really do want to enable them to get on their own feet and be able to sustain that going forward, rather than continuing dependence either on an individual or an institution. And that really has to feel good to see people make that grade.
It does. We're hoping in the second year with some of our repeat people to take them to something that Job Ebenezer calls value-added growing. He'd like to see some folks have an herb garden. And you know how easy it is to dry herbs. Or perhaps even take the fresh ones, not only to enrich their own diet, but maybe they could sell those items to a local store or restaurant, or maybe a hotel or something that would be using them and prepare them. Perhaps even to people at like a little farmer's market. So that's one of the pieces. Also teaching them about berries and things like that that they might use, which they normally would not get in a food pantry. So the second level is pretty exciting. Not only would they have better diet, but they might be able to have money to buy protein for their diet, which we couldn't teach them to grow in this setting.
It all sounds good, but you were also sharing with me that there are some frustrations with those things too, that as much as it would be a good thing for people to be able to step to that second level, there are forces out there that would try to squash that even before it begins, aren't there?
Yes, there are. There are people who, because of economic situations, have to move or leave. We also have some of the gardening projects that are tied to not only domestic abuse shelters, where people are there for just short periods of time, but we've also started to work with nonviolent women offenders in Sharon, Pennsylvania. So those folks are there for short times, but we're making them mini gardens so they can take those along with them, and we use whatever's available, flower pots or whatever. And our gardening coordinator, Pastor Held, is incredible. She can recycle anything and make it part of the garden. So when Bethany gets a hold of things, you just don't know what they're going to turn into.
We are at the point where we need to take our second break. We're going to pause just for a short time, and we'll be back for our final segment. Thanks again, Dory.
My pleasure.